outdoor summer party, a day on the boat, at the cottage, around the pool. Summer fun opens us up to additional risk when it comes to liability. We have lawyer David Hollingsworth on the program. He's going to answer some of your questions. We're going to talk about a groundbreaking case. But for the most part, we wanted to start by talking about how this great weather really does open us up for additional liability, David.
It does. It does. I mean, obviously, Leanne, we don't want to live in a bubble, but at the same time, there's a lot of socializing that occurs during the summer months. Things like backyard parties with pools, boating, cottages, and all sorts of things.
So host responsibility is a great thing to tackle first and foremost. So if you are hosting a party,
well, be responsible. I mean, they obviously, let your common sense be your guide, but you have to know that as a host of a party, you have a responsibility to your guests not to overserve them. You have a responsibility to your guests and their children to make sure that they're safe around a pool or sprinklers, that they aren't darting out into the street, that they aren't, any undue risks, that you are, you're doing your best to stem those.
So suppose this long weekend you've invited a whole bunch of people up to the cottage to help build a deck. What happens in that case if someone slips, falls, hurts themselves?
Well, I mean, in a situation of, if they're not in the course of their employment, if it's just friends, what happens is you've got, there's the Occupier's Liability Act, and the Occupier's Liability Act, assuming you're in Ontario, says that you need to maintain your premises in a state that's safe for their intended purpose. So if people are on your premises, you have an obligation to make sure that they're safe. In the event that they are injured, then they may have a cause of action against you in negligence for not keeping them safe on your property. What
about boating? I mean, you have some insurance when you own a boat and you have to be licensed and all the rest, but what if something happens to someone you're hosting on a boat?
Yeah, well, I mean, boating is interesting because, I mean, there are certain navigation laws. You want to have insurance on your boat. If you're going to have people on your boat, you want to be responsible again with the drinking and everything else. No drinking if you're driving a boat, of course. But you have an obligation that anyone on your boat, it's like any kind of motor vehicle, that you have to ensure their safety. And to the extent that you don't and they are injured, you can be liable.
Okay, so this leads us into this very interesting case, a case that I don't know how many appeals were actually involved, and it's a case that you just recently won for a client that relates to a motor vehicle, and this is really important information for anyone. If you do not have an active driver's license, well, let's set the stage in terms of what happened, because there were 3 cases around the same time, 3 young men, all young men?
Yeah, and the case that I ended up with, I had a young man who was, he had no driver's license, and therefore he had no insurance of any sort. He wasn't a dependent on anybody, so he had no access to insurance whatsoever, but he did have a dirt bike. And he rode this dirt bike on a dirt bike track, and it was always only intended for a dirt bike track. It was never going to be on the road. He went over a jump, landed wrong, ended up a paraplegic, unfortunately. And so he had very significant medical and rehabilitation needs beyond what OHIP provides, but no insurance. And so we made an application to something called the Motor Vehicle Accident Claims Fund, which is a fund of last resort. And what this does is for people involved in motor vehicle accidents who need this help, they provide it. They denied his claim on the basis that essentially the Motor Vehicle Accident Claims Fund is there to protect, let's say, a pedestrian on a roadway who is struck by the irresponsible motorist who doesn't have any insurance, not designed to protect somebody who is on a dirt bike track, on a dirt bike with no private insurance.
So the bottom line, the others who were involved in this, because they had a driver's license and an insured vehicle, they were looked after in terms of their injury claim.
They had their own private insurance that covered them. Their automobile policy covered them.
So you would like viewers to know that if you're in that situation where you in fact don't have a driver's license, but you do have a recreational vehicle, have insurance on the recreational vehicle.
Absolutely. An ATV, any kind of off-road vehicle. There's something called the Off-Road Vehicles Act. You can look it up online. It'll list the vehicles that they're required to have motor vehicle liability policies. You want to make sure that you've got it registered and you've got access to insurance.
So this young man was in a very bad situation for a number of years. I mean, he is still paralyzed, but at least now he has some financial means to, as you said, get the care he needs.
Well, that's just it. We got the motor vehicle accident. We went through a couple of appeals, and ultimately it was decided that the Motor Vehicle Accident Claims Fund did have to pay for his benefits, and we argued because it was a motor vehicle and because it ought to have been insured, it falls within the definition of vehicles insured and accidents that are insured under the Claims Fund Act. So the result of this case was that we broadened the scope of the medical and rehabilitation benefits available to the individuals who are injured in an accident.
And in having you on the program, it just makes people aware that the best thing you can possibly do is carry that insurance. When we come back after the break, we have your questions for a lawyer, Dave Hollingsworth. And of course, you're invited to send him some as well. We'll have more of Dave when we come back. We know we always catch your attention when we say free legal advice, and David Hollingsworth is here with that today. And actually, some of your prepared questions, and you were invited to send an email question to ottawainjury.ca. There's a link on our website to Dave's website, and these aren't all personal injury questions. Actually, the first one's about a will, which is always timely, and we always say on the program that everyone, even if you have a holograph will, which is a handwritten will,
that's right,
you need a will. Okay, my aunt died, and we think she has a will, but we don't know where it is. So how can we find out if she has one, and what happens if we can't find it?
Well, what I would do if I were looking for a will, first thing I would wonder is if she owns any real estate. If she owns any real estate, then I would get a title search done and find out who the lawyer was that acted for her on her real estate purchase, and then go to that lawyer and see if they have a will for her. If that doesn't turn anything up, then maybe that same lawyer or another estate's lawyer, what you can do is get them to send an ad out, usually through the local website. In Ottawa, it's the County of Carleton Law Association down at the courthouse. You'd say, look, we're looking for a will, and they would put an advertisement on the website and in a newsletter, and then you can go to the Law Society of Upper Canada. They would put an ad out, and you wait, and then once you're satisfied that no will's going to get turned up, then you consider her as having passed away intestate. If she's passed away intestate, then you would, I guess it's a good idea to then go to an estate's lawyer, and they would make an application for a certificate of an appointment of an estate trustee, which is a long way of saying the court will decide who's going to manage her affairs.
Which is why it's really important to have a will, so you actually get to decide. Okay, that was a fabulous answer. I think we all learned something there. How about this one? I bought a used car from a dealership, and it needed a new transmission in the first month. Is there a lemon law in Canada?
Well, there is no lemon law, certainly in Ontario. I don't think anywhere in Canada, but there's no lemon law in Ontario per se. They've tried to pass lemon laws in the past, and they just haven't gone through. But there are certain consumer protection legislations out there. The Ontario Motor Vehicle Dealers Act has been amended to require motor vehicle dealers to disclose any pertinent information related to a history of a vehicle. So to the extent that a dealer has concealed any pertinent information, you may have a claim against them. There's also the Sale of Goods Act, Section 15 of the Sale of Goods Act. There is an implied warranty that anything that you sell is fit for its intended purpose.
So there isn't a lemon law, but there is recourse.
There is recourse, and you would go to, small claims court or whatever the appropriate court is.
And this is a really great question. Look at our geography. It's a real quick one, though. We're going to have to get a quick answer.
Yes.
I live in Gatineau and was injured in a car accident in Ottawa last fall. Can I sue the driver who was at fault?
Yes. The answer is yes. In Ontario, we have a two-tiered system, no fault insurance and then fault insurance. If you're a Quebec resident, you would get your no fault, which is your accident benefits, rehab, and all of that from the SAAQ, Société d'Assurance, Association d'Assurance du Québec. You'd get like physio and all that from them. And then if it's somebody else's fault and you're hurt and you have losses, you can sue in Ontario.
Okay, the great short answer. We actually have time for a real quick one then.
Okay.
We are in the process of having a new kitchen put in, and the contractor is charging us double the quote, and it's not even finished yet. What can we do?
Well, first thing you do is you look at the contract. Assuming there's a contract, usually contractors' contracts are either a fixed price contract where they say, I'm doing all the work, here's the price, or more commonly it's time and materials. Here's what I charge you on an hourly basis. I'm going to keep track of my time, and you pay for the materials, and then we send you a bill.
But don't you legally have to be within a certain percentage of your quote?
No, a quote is a quote, and obviously, you have this discussion. Oh, well, we didn't. A quote is always subject to what you can't anticipate, and inevitably there are extras, and this is usually where the fight exists. So the key there is, number one, the parole evidence rule in Ontario says that anything in writing trumps anything that's discussed. and your recourse is to the courts.
We want to thank you very much, Dave Hollingsworth. There's a link on our website to Dave's website if you have any questions for a future program.
Thanks.